All right, hey everybody. You hear me all right? Sounds pretty good. All right. I am Louie, you don't know me. And well, tonight we're going to be talking about cold IPA and how there's new trends in craft beer. All right, so obviously IPAs have seen a ton of variants over the years, right? Um, especially IPA covers a ton by itself. So we'll go through just a few that they have the red IPA, black, white, brown, rye, session, Belgian, brew is now an official one. Hazy technically has graduated his own categories, 21C, but I'm putting it here because it's kind of the newest common variant of IPA. And now maybe one day we'll see cold IPA out the list. Not sure yet. Um, so I figure we start with a quick poll. I want to see, just get an idea of what people know about it, what you think it is, and kind of where we stand there. So yeah, go to this website or scan the QR code, pick fill out your answer there. So I'm wondering, do you think it's is it more marketing for IPA fans? Is it a hoppy beer meant with ale yeast that's cold fermented? Is it a hoppy beer meant to warm with lager yeast? Or you've never heard before? This is a whole new thing for you. Meanwhile, I think we'll So please raise your hand. Serve. Is there anyone else that can serve that first beer here? We're currently trending. So the cans look cool back here. All right, so let's see here. How we doing? Another name for an IPL. Okay, I'm not surprised that is leading currently. Actually. Yeah. Let's see. Do we have maybe one more person that can grab some cans? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, she does. All right, thanks, Judy. All right, so the we have a new leading contender here so far, right? Hoppy beer with ale yeast fermented cold. Okay, that's all right. That's good. No more. So there's never heard of it. That's pretty good, I guess, coming from a homebrew club, right? That's good. I kind of expect at least a few of those to come in, honestly.
Probably the smart ass answers.
Yeah, right. It was intentionally a no other box or an open field, right? Oh, there we go. Who's the smart ass here? Was there? All right. Well, I think we've got a pretty decent spread here. We'll move on. So it looks like ale yeast fermented cold is kind of the general gist here, right? So coming around now is this beer, AleSmith's currently trending. They classify it as a cold IPA, and they describe it like this: this cold IPA hits with a strong punch of aromatic hop intensity and high bitterness, but finishes crisp and clean, leaving the drinker craving no sip. Um, I tried this one, and I thought it was pretty tasty and really refreshing, even if maybe slightly heavier on the finish than I would have expected the style. But curious what you all think. Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right. All right. I mean, it's an IPA, right? So if you like IPAs, it's great. I'm sure Bob loves it over there. All right, so I guess how would you describe a cold IPA? This guy says it's a bit western than West Coast. It's crisp and sessionable. It's strong and sneaky. It's cold IPA. Yeah, yeah. So who's this guy? Yeah, could Sean Daniel please stand up? He's not here tonight. Dang it. All right. Dang it. All right. So this guy is Kevin Davey. He is kind of the creator of cold IPA, and he comes from Wayfinder beer, which is located in Portland, Oregon. A little bit about Wayfinder. These guys are primarily a lager brewery. What they pretty much do mostly lagers and some IPAs, kind of like a 60-40 split roughly. So they're pretty much speaking to me. I love, those are my two favorite styles these days of beer. And so Kevin got into this industry. He started out at Chuckanut Brewing. I think he moved to Firestone for a bit. He went to Gordon Beers, where he won a World Beer Cup medal at that brew pub, and landed at Wayfinder Beer, where he was for most of his career. I think he just recently left in the last few months, I'm pretty sure, for a new venture. But so the interesting about this is Chuckanut, where he started at, was this brewery is kind of like well known, especially in the Pacific Northwest. Is a lager brewery. There's a lot of history there. The Chuckanut was started by Will and Mary Kemper, who have been doing lagers in that area since the mid '80s. I think in the Seattle area, Bainbridge, to be specific, they started Thomas Kemper Brewing in '84, and they have been pretty much focusing on lagers ever since. Do a bunch of contract work throughout the country and world, as a matter of fact, Mexico, Turkey, and finally landed back here in the Seattle area to open up Chuckanut. And so these days, a lot of these newer kind of craft lager breweries are becoming popular. A lot of those brewers have a lineage going back to Chuckanut Brewing. The Kemper family, these guys have just, I don't know, they just spread their knowledge, and they're creating fantastic beer and newer brewers that are carrying on some of the traditions. So a couple you might know that sort of came from this background are, besides Wayfinder, Green up in Hood River, Oregon, and from what I understand, Austin Beer Garden Brewery in Austin. I'm sure there are more. I don't really know all of them, but yeah, big lager history, and they're just moving it forward. So, excuse me. So October 2018, they released this beer called Relapse IPA. The idea behind it was, it's got Kevin Davey. He had already kind of, they've been doing lagers for a while. They already had kind of perfected a couple of key IPA styles, like the West Coast IPA, Hazy IPA, and kind of want to do something different that he could make his own. And being, a lager brewer at heart, you want to incorporate some of those techniques. And so the idea was to create a West Coast style IPA, but take it even more to the extreme. So let's eliminate anything that gets in the way of the hops and just make the hops shine. So even paler than pale malt base, still a high bitterness, showcases American hops, and make it super crushable, crisp, clean, dry in the finish, and clear, believe it or not. Right? Considering how hazy has been so popular lately. So this is what we came up with. It's basically, the gist of it is it's a beer with Pilsner malt, a lot of adjuncts, and lager yeast that's fermented warm, warmer than you would normally expect for lager yeast, actually like ale temperatures. And we'll get into a little more about why in a bit. But the other component of that is it still needs to be super hoppy, high level bitterness, and the idea was to showcase the American style hops in particular. Not a lot of the beers these days do kind of focus on these newer style tropical fruity hops, right? And those are great and all, but this intention was just to focus on American style hops. So yeah, why is it called a cold IPA? I think go to a brewery and see something that's described as a warm fermented lager on tap. Maybe not going to sound the most interesting to you, right? But I think that it's just trying to describe just describe the intention behind it, and you just kind of get this idea in your head, like you said. Maybe try to see it in your head, an ice cold beer, but IPA. Yeah, is my paraphrasing. So yeah, I saw a lot of initially the poll. A lot of people say this is just an IPL, right? And I argue it is not just an IPL, and there are a handful of reasons for that. So going back to Kevin Davey, once again, he actually, when I was looking into this, he had said that he was not a big fan of IPLs in general, and when you look back at how IPLs are made, they kind of fall into two camps, right? One is just an IPA that is fermented with lager yeast, but I think more commonly is really like a Pilsner base that is just hopped more to like IPA levels, right? So the issue with that is, well, for one, you have this like lower ABV beer, right? That has that these days, especially, is hopped with all these newer school, tropical, stone fruit, that kind of thing, as a hop character. Um, but also has it kind of needs to have a lower bitterness because it's lower ABV, this and that. And I think most importantly, his gripe with it is that because it's fermented like a lager, you have these lager traits like maybe some sulfur notes and the other characters that come from lager use at a typical lager temperature. You feel it kind of clashes a little bit with, with just the high hop characteristics, especially fruitiness. And so we sought to do something a little bit different, right? Let's scratch the lager or the Pilsner base and still make it predominantly like a higher ABV IPA. All right. Yeah, so I guess we'll get around next beer here. So this is a Love a Clean IPA from Duckfoot. So unfortunately, I really wanted to get this original beer, the Relapse IPA, which actually was now called the Original Cold IPA. Could not find it in recent times, even though it was more available several months ago. I don't really have a reason for that, but tried this Duckfoot beer, and I thought it was actually pretty good in a lot of ways. It exhibits that super kind of clean finish. It's really crisp and dry. It's hoppy, So the thing that's a little bit different about this one, which is kind of interesting, is that they actually did the opposite of using a lager yeast fermented warm and did an ale yeast fermented very cold. I reached out to Brett Goldstock about this beer. He told me they use 20% Lake maize in it, and they use an ale yeast they ferment at, I think it was 54 degrees. He said it never goes above 56. And so it's really cold, which is great because the whole idea of this like style or sub-style, whatever it is to kind of create this blank slate. Don't want the esters, don't want to, just want to let the hops, shine and do the thing. And so so it's called I Love a Clean IPA. I think mostly due to the fact that this is a fundraiser for the I Love a Clean San Diego, and so this is they do call it cold IPA still, but the name I think is mainly around the charity that they're trying to support. Anyway, I hope you like this one. But one other thing that Brett said that I thought was really interesting was he said they ferment mash really low at like 147 to get an insane amount of attenuation. And he said this beer always finishes at under 1 Plato or 1.04. So I found it surprising. I thought that was really interesting and fantastic, actually. I don't know specifically what strain they use on this one, so I would have to find that out. all I know is the ale use. So I assume some kind of more neutral.
You guys have questions? Stick your hand up so I can come around with a microphone.
All right, so I created this just to give it a kind of general overview of, why the cold IPA is a little bit different than the IPA, right? And if you go to Wayfinder's website, they actually have at the top, one of their main tabs is cold IPA. And the reason for that was, I think when they first put this beer out back in 2018, kind of like the brewed IPA, people started catching on to it, started, trying to do their own thing. But of course that meant it went everywhere, right? Like they just either just slapped the label on it or they completely changed what it was intended to be. And so I think they're trying to rein this back in and like, let's publish exactly what we intend for this to be and kind of claim it as ours, that sort of thing, right? And so if you go to the website, this is what you'll see. You see, we're trying, essentially, West Coast IPA taken to the extreme. They need to be drier, excessive hoppiness, and a cleaner finish that essentially showcases American hop. So this is a little bit, the maltiness aspect is a little bit, it's not as drastic as maybe it seems here. Your cold IPA, because it uses a high percentage of adjuncts, you're getting minimal malt flavor, right? Whereas IPL, you're typically using completely a malt base. Not a huge difference there. So don't read too much into that one. But I think bitterness is actually a big difference. IPLs typically are bitter at a much lower level because they're just lower ABV beers. They're still hoppy. They have a lot of aroma and flavor and whatnot, but they just don't have the same, amount of bitterness. Fermentation temperature, naturally, the original intention was to, use lager yeast at much warmer temperature. IPLs are fermented with lager yeast at much lower temperatures, a typical lager temperature. You get a little more attenuation out of cold IPA. Once again, I think because of those adjuncts. And the ABV is quite different. Cold IPA is intended to be more, you're talking mid to high 6% at the low end. And so, IPLs, you're like more at probably in the 5 range, mid 5s, right? And lastly, carbonation is one thing that was kind of emphasized for cold IPAs. You want to do a little bit higher level, helps emphasize that dryness and, use some of those hot pickers a little more as well. So if we look at some numbers, I was trying to come up with a couple of styles from BGCP guidelines that we can compare cold IPA to, and I know a lot of aspects of it sound similar to a brute IPA, which they are, but not everything, right? So, starting gravity compared to a brute IPA, not too far off. Finishing gravity obviously is quite different, mainly because the brute uses those enzymes and has the intention of that style is really a lot more different, right? You're trying to go just make it almost a barley champagne. So it's the finish is way drier, using those enzymes, just ferments everything out pretty much. ABV is similar. IBUs are quite different. Once again, although brute is hoppy, should have some hop aroma flavor. It's not supposed to be this big bitter punch. It's champagne, bubble, right? And SRM across the board, it's pretty much the same for all of them, so I'm not going to get much into that. I chose German Pilsner on the other side here because, IPLs, once again, go back to, they're usually based off some kind of a Pilsner base. Might be, you might call it International Pale Lager, I don't know, but the specs are similar regardless, I think. You can see, they start much lower gravity. Gravities, it tends to be higher. ABV is much lower, although for an IPL, I would argue probably it's a little higher than the actual German Pilsner category. And IBUs are probably actually in a similar range. All right, so we'll get on to one more beer. Yeah. So this one was, this is my homebrew, and This is one that I brewed last year with Barley Brewing as part of the Hungry Summer project. The one that's come around is the same recipe, except I used the Nova Lager yeast instead of 3470, which I typically use. I've only done this a few times, so I'm still kind of playing with it and trying to change some things. But I thought the interesting thing to point out were that, yeah, Fermented Lager is 66, pretty much right in line with the typical ale temperature. I did stray from the original intention of this variant. Like I mentioned before, it's supposed to be more like showcasing American hops and whatnot, high level bitterness. So you want more of that like pine, resin, that sort of character. But okay to have some of the fruity floral notes too, like citrus and whatnot. I use Zacca and Strata, so it's not going to have those same notes. I was just trying to kind of do my own thing with it, and didn't quite get the same level of attenuation that I had hoped to get. I originally thought it was the yeast, but then when I went back to my notes, I realized that the last one I used 3470 is the exact same finishing gravity. So clearly there's something else I gotta tweak on and work on this process. But yeah, it's straightforward. It's Pilsner malt and 30% flaked rice, and that's it. I'm sorry, Stan. Stan is what I would think about using Nova Lager at 60. I think, honestly, I think it would work fine. But you just got to keep in mind the whole intention here is to have a blank slate, right? We don't want, we kind of want things to be as neutral as possible and not produce any kind of esters, sulfur. I mean, sulfur is a big thing with the lager use, I think, right? And so, I'll talk about more in a second. I guess why the fermentation control matters there, right? It depends on the strain. Honestly, I think 60 would turn out just fine. The very first time I did this beer with 3470, I did it at 63 because I was too scared to go any higher. And that's part of the thing that inspired me to even try to begin with. I thought, well, I've been reading about this strain that supposedly ferments clean all the way up to high 60s, and I love IPAs, and I love the idea of a really light kind of crush for IPAs. So let me try this. This time around, I said, well, let me just go for it. I figure worst case, if it does throw off some esters or whatever, it's an IPA. So I'm not trying to make this like perfect, lager. Oh, Chris.
I was curious if you could pronounce the name of the beer and what does that mean?
Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't talk about that. Misnomenclature is the name of this beer. If you were at HomebrewCon, you may have had also the Lalaman booth. It was served under the name Ice Water to fit our theme, but when it was brewed with these guys, it was Misnomenclature, and it was just a play on words because this style has been kind of poked fun at quite a bit. Some people call it warm IPL. They call it IPA. I don't know, and so it was just a mishmash of words that misnomer, right, and nomenclature essentially. And honestly, it was the brainchild of my wife Katie there, thinking through a few things, and she came up with it. I'm like, that's awesome. I like that. We'll go with it. All right, so I'll just go over a little bit of kind of how the style's made, how it's intended to be made. Start with the malt. Obviously, because we're trying to create this blank slate, you want to go as light as possible. So Pilsner malt. Majority, all but the adjuncts really should be Pilsner malt. No kernel malts, nothing else. Just keep it, as pale as possible. We want to focus on American malts in particular because, for one, I think they have a little bit less character than like continental malt, but more importantly is they seem to have more diacetic power. Maybe that's not completely true in all cases these days, but like in general, the European malts were more made for those traditional lager styles, right? Which typically don't have adjuncts. They're all malt beers. So the next thing you want is a lot of adjunct, 20 to 40% of rice or corn. I use rice in mine because I just the idea of corn kind of scared me a little bit. I thought it might come through a bit, but after trying the one you had before this, Brett's beer from Duckfoot, I don't know, I was convinced it's pretty neutral actually. So I didn't really get the corn version on that. Maybe you could use either one just fine. So you want to get traditional hop character in this style. And I realized that probably none of the samples we served today really exemplify that, but it's just what we have at the moment. So sorry about that. So yeah, typical C hops are kind of like the base for this. You can go, yeah, so Centennial, Cascade, Chinook. You can also throw in some Simcoe, Amarillo, get a little bit of those floral characters and whatnot in there. And in lager use, this is kind of one of the main differentiators here, right? 3470 is kind of the staple here. It's just a beast that does whatever you want to do, and it does it cleanly. It's not the only one you can use. I mean, the Nova lagers seem to do all right in this last batch of homebrew, but if you want to play it safe, go this route. It'll ferment warm. Wayfinder says, hey, you can also do ale use fermented much colder, which we also saw, and I think that works reasonably well too. But I don't know. I kind of like. It makes it more fun to do the lager use fermented warm because it goes against what you think and think is right, and I think does a good job. Like lager yeast in general was intended from day one to be a very neutral strain. It doesn't give you a whole lot of anything unless the malt shine, right? So I prefer lager personally, but I think either way works. So the how we make this beer with these base ingredients, West Coast style hopping techniques. So that means let's get a whole lot of these IPUs early in the boil. Just want to target 50 to 70. That's a pretty high amount. So I think Wayfinder says they do, like half the IBUs very beginning of the boil. So very kind of traditional methods for this beer. And then the rest will come late boil, whirlpool, and that'll give you the rest of that bitterness. The ale temperatures, obviously, just kind of went over that a little bit, but mid 60s will work just fine using this yeast anyway. And dry hopping is done during active fermentation, kind of pretty typical. These guys being a lot of lager brewers, they do they kreuzen and spun and all that, or spoon, how you pronounce that. And so they do it at that point. And the purpose of that is, well, for one, to encourage any biotransformation that might happen with the hops and yeast involved. Also, to encourage any hop creep to happen quickly, get it over with, and I guess that's what those two things primarily. And lastly, the carbonation intended to be pushed a little higher than you expect, right? So 2.6, 2.75 on CO2. IPA is normally what 2.4, 2.5, something like that, tops, if I remember right. So just little tweaks to kind of really accentuate the character. Because one other thing I'll mention that's not listed here is mashing. I guess no surprise there. You want to mash low, just really drive maximum amount of attenuation. Wayfinder does, being a lager really does step mashes. They cocked, not for this particular style, I think, but in general, so they just incorporate those traits into IPAs as well. So, do you think it's cold IPA just hype? It's here to stay. Do you think it's just hype? There's some hype. All right. Who thinks it's here to stay? Maybe. Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's kind of actually, I feel like there's a little more people think it's here to stay. Everything evolves, right, in craft beer, and I feel like American IPA in general has continually gotten lighter and lighter in its base malts. Crystal malts are kind of a thing of the past now in general. even Pilsner malt is used as a big portion, if not all, the base malt now in IPAs for a lot of people, not everyone. And so I don't know. Maybe this could be rolled into just standard American IPA. Hard to say. I think besides the color, the appearance, which looks very straw colored, right, in general. I think I'd be thrown off if I was judging a beer that was a cold IPA in the standard American IPA. I probably wouldn't think much of it. So maybe it'll just kind of fade into standard IPA. I don't know, but I think in general, right, the point is beer is supposed to be fun, and so I think it's cool that people are trying different things, pushing the envelope, not trying to stick to the strict guidelines that have been set. That's how new style's going to be. Is we didn't start off day one with all these categories in the guidelines. People are changing things, and this is just another one of those little tweaks that may or may not last, may fizzle out, may become brewed IPA, which is kind of no longer around. And based on the fact that I had trouble finding the original beer to serve, maybe it's already on its way out. I don't know, but guess we'll see. Only time will tell. So that's really all I have on this. Real quick, I just want to thank Katie for helping me out on creating some visuals on the slide. Obviously, there's no way I could have made things look quite this nice on my own. I'm just not. I just don't have that mind. So thank you. Yeah, I was getting to questions next. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, fire them away.
So thoroughly loved your beer. Can you talk a little bit about scaling your homebrew up to the commercial size, and what differences did you notice? And did you do things to address those differences, or did you just roll with it because it turned out really good?
So I didn't have much of a choice but to roll with it. Right? But I would say that the main differences for this nomenclature were that for one, we undershot our target gravity by a decent amount. I think it was mostly because of just a miscalculation, misunderstanding, and how much we actually needed, to make that work. So there was some extra dextrose thrown in to kind of compensate for it. Also, the hopping regimen, they wanted to change how it was done a little bit, just to do things in nice sized bags and not have to keep things open for a bag of this open for dry hop later, that sort of thing. So little tweaks, but in general, I thought I scaled up pretty well actually. I mean, it's a real simple recipe, honestly, and I think we use Vitamin Pilsner malt for that one because that's just what they usually get, and I'm cool with that. That's a great malt, even though it contradicts kind of what I just said a few slides back about using American malts for conversion and whatnot, but it didn't seem a problem. And one thing I'll say about the beer is that I the very first time I made it, the recipe was the same, but I threw all those whirlpool hops in just off boil and only for 3 minutes, because otherwise the IBUs would have just skyrocketed. It was like half a pound, and I was just trying to keep it in check. So then the second time I did, I said, well, let me try doing a little bit cooler whirlpool hop. Still get the same IBUs, but let's see how it contributes to the hop character. And I did the same thing with this third batch, but even make it a touch cooler than that. I actually accidentally undershot it a little bit and went a little cooler than that too. And what I had seen along the way is that I think the hoppiness or the hop character actually became more grassy to me, and that surprised me a little bit. And so I think the next time I do this, I'm actually going to go back to just doing a full, boil temperature hopping on the hot side. I may even not do the whirlpool, just do a 5-minute, or I'm going to try the Kevin Davey method. Early boil, some late boil hops, and then dry hop, and to see what happens. But I couldn't help myself when I first tried this. I wanted to make it more of a San Diego style, right? On more probably or whatever.
Thanks for
Bob. Oh, sorry, sorry, Bob. We'll get to you in 1 second.
It's great information. Thank you. Given the overlap of styles and here, do you see a session cold IPA on the horizon? or are we all just going to drink German Pilsner?
So you're saying cold pale ale? I don't know. Okay, so I mean, I feel like I'm a little bit of a biographer now for Kevin Davey here, but just speaking for him in a sense, the idea behind this was the thing that made this kind of palatable and great was just, it's high IBU, and in order to kind of make that work, you kind of need a high IBU to go with it, right? That like alcohol, bodies, touch of sweetness kind of balances out the hoppiness. I think that was one of his gripes also with the idea. I was like, you throw all these hops at a low ABV beer, and kind of like a session IPA, it's just a little thin, feels a little out of balance. And so I think this is another one of the situations where, a cold pale or session cold IPA, what do you want to call it, just kind of goes back to, well, you might as well do IPL at that point, sort of. That, even though I guess they're not quite the same, like IPL is still a cold fermentation. But I don't know, and try it. That's the whole fun of this, right? Maybe it'll be great. And honestly, I like IPLs myself. I think they have their place, so it's all about preference. Nothing wrong with it. Yeah.
Louie, what mash temperature do you use?
I mash mine at 148, but I do want to try step mashing in the future to see if I can really drive that fermentability a little more. Actually, the next thing I really am planning on trying is my mash pH based on Doug Brown's presentation, which I'm sure a lot of you guys saw. You were here at Homebrew Time. I was pretty surprised by the extra attenuation you got from the slightly higher mash pH. I've been usually aiming for around 5.3. So the next time I do this, it'll definitely be 5.5. I'm going to see how that changes things. But yeah, I do the single infusion, and just because I do this usually during the work day, I mash in, let it go for longer on YouTube while I'm doing other stuff, come back to it later, maybe an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, and usually let it go quite a long time. And so you would think with all that time, it's, at a low temperature, it's golden and it's got everything it's going to give. But I don't know. I mean, based on what we saw on Duckfoot's beer and what they're doing here, surely I can get a lower longevity out of this.
I was just wondering, I wonder if it could be renamed a warm IPL.
No, Rob, they cannot be.
Or a dry hop pilsner.
Okay, so if you go online and read up on this.
Excuse me, Louie?
Yeah.
Are you saying that you're brewing beer during your workday?
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I work flexible hours.
No,
okay.
no. That's what I was going to ask you.
So yes,
you've
I do.
asked us a lot of questions about what do we think? Cold IPA, IPA here to stay. What do you think? I mean, I'm still sort of confused. It's like,
Well, so am I.
what the hell is it, right? What do you think? What do you think this is around for a while?
I like the intention of that, honestly. I think it's I think it's a little bit different. At the end of the day, I think it's a relatively minor tweak on what we already have, right? It's not like some earth-shattering thing. It's not a milkshake IPA, which thankfully is not listed in those variants. But I don't know. It is kind of specific, right? Especially the fact that it's trying to focus on American style hops, and most people like to do other things these days, except the Pacific Northwest, which tends to still like their traditional, hop character. Nothing wrong with that. I love it too. It's different, right? And I don't think it's going to become the raging new hit, personally. But once again, might just be an IPA. Right? Maybe people stop slapping a label on it and just call it an IPA, and we'll all be happy. I don't know.
Your beer was very good, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.